guys, what's up, woke folks? So it's Thursday morning. Today is I don't even know, April like 13th maybe ish. Sorry I haven't made a video in a while. So two exciting things. I finally got a little mount thing for the car for the windshield, which is what I had hoped was going to make the video less shaky per request. However, I'm sitting here watching it right now and it's shaking like crazy. So, Vermont roads. And so the other thing is that I've been super busy. I'm in the midst of switching jobs. So I am moving from Burlington to Montpelier, which is way closer for me. It's about a half hour closer a day. And, excuse me, like I have a wicked itchy nose, which is so weird. I usually never have spring allergies, only fall allergies. But for some reason, for the last, month or two, I've been super itchy. Anyway, so this is good. It is a pay cut, but it's better benefits, and it's way closer to home. And with the skyrocketing price of gas right now, that was a huge consideration. I've literally had to borrow money for weeks on end to get to work, just to get to work and get through. And so, yeah, and some of you know I'm separated. I've been legally separated for years and years, but I'm going through a divorce, or further separation, whatever. And so that's been going on, and my husband and I are being amicable for sure right now, but it wasn't that way a month or so ago, and things were pretty rough. Anyway, so it's been requested over and over again by my one subscriber. I don't know how many subscribers I have too. That I make another video, but I had so much going on. Oh, and then the last thing was I had a very minor surgical procedure on my toes. To my two big toes, I had removed a part of the nail, which I tried to avoid for months, but I was getting these sort of ingrown nails, which I've heard it can happen when you get diabetes. I'm only recently diagnosed with diabetes, about a year now, although I believe I've had it a few years. And my blood work was just misread. But anyway, so long story short, bad things with your feet is bad when you have diabetes, and so it's very dangerous to have like injuries to your feet. And I kept getting these ingrown nails that were making a hole in my toes, and so the doc was like, hey, I can just remove that nail or part of it and that'll stop happening. And I was like, oh no, like I'm a vain girl, like I do my fingernails and my toenails in the summer, and I don't want that part of a toenail missing. Ew. However, the pain just kept getting worse and worse, and even going to the podiatrist every couple months and buying my own like surgical toenail clippers, sort of, or doctor style, whatever, I still couldn't get that toenail out. And obviously, as I said, that's very dangerous as a diabetic. So I finally gave up and said, okay, we'll just do it. And that was a month or so ago. And so he did it the other day. Last week, Wednesday, actually a week ago today, exactly. And he said, whoa, those toenails were really embedded, which I knew. Like, they were so bad, I couldn't even get them out anymore. Which means they were digging into my skin and they were causing an infection, probably. So he took them out, and I followed his directions pretty closely. I didn't soak them as quickly as he said. He said within 24 hours, and I probably waited another 8 to 12 hours after that. But otherwise, I followed his instructions, and I still got infections in both feet, and it is gross and painful. And like, I literally last night, so I've been doing peroxide on them. He said soak them with Epsom salts. I did that. I tried some essential oils I had at home. I used the triple antibiotic stuff like he said. I even used a silver cream. Believe me, you guys have done it all. And the infection is not only not going away, but it's getting worse. And last night, I literally ended up doing basically home surgery, cutting out a ton of necrotic tissue. And it was disgusting. And I used to be a nurse, and I had to stop a couple times because it was literally making me nauseated. And so I probably should be going to urgent care right now, but and I did go to urgent care last weekend, and they put me on Cipro too. So I am taking the antibiotics as prescribed. Sorry, I was just looking. I thought that was a friend of mine walking, but it wasn't. He walks like him. And so I'm taking the antibiotics, I'm doing all the stuff, and it's not getting better. And if it's not better by, I would say, like maybe Friday, I only work a couple hours on Friday, I probably will head up to the hospital and not urgent care again, because I have a weird feeling that this might need to be treated a little bit more severely. And as you may or may not know, diabetics lose feet a lot because of stuff like this, and that's exactly what I was trying to freaking prevent, and here it is happening. The other thing is, here in Vermont, like, not much is up and green yet, but I would love nothing more than to make a poultice out of maybe like yarrow or plantain, flat leaf plantain. But we don't have any up yet. So if any of my friends or neighbors has any, I would happily buy it from you, trade for something, etc. You know, even some eggs or whatever. Because I would love to just make a poultice for a couple nights. And so that's that. So I've been really busy, but that leads me into exactly what I did want to make a video about when I did make a video, which I'm not quite there yet. I mean, the weather's not quite there yet, so I wanted to talk about it's still, I think people are still sugaring right now, you know, doing maple syrup. They're tapping the trees, pulling the sap and boiling. And I really need to go buy some syrup. I haven't had any in a long time. And so maybe like next payday I'll go. You know, it's expensive. It's not cheap. It's like $60 a gallon or more. But it's obviously so freaking worth it. And a gallon would last me like more than a year, because we don't use it that often. But anyway, so I want to do that. And then I want to start foraging for some things, and the very first thing that comes up in the spring around here, or on my property I should say, is colt's foot. And I'm really sorry I'm not good enough at videos yet to do a picture of it, but colt's foot has these big leaves that are as big as my fist really, and then even bigger. They get even bigger throughout the growing season. But the very, very, very first thing that comes up, there's no leaf yet, and they have a yellow flower that looks very similar to a dandelion, but it's not a dandelion. If you look closely, it's smaller. It's a little bit like what I would call hairier. It's got more like little spikes or whatever, and it has this funny looking stem, where dandelion has this round, sort of almost clear stem, and smooth. The colt's foot has this almost looks like dragon scales to me on the stem, and so that's colt's foot. And the reason it's called colt's foot is the leaves look similar to the hoof of a baby horse colt. To me, they don't look that similar, but I get it. You know, it's sort of a similar shape. And so colt's foot is really, really, really good. You can harvest the flowers in the spring, early spring, and then the leaves later in the year. And it's really good for cough. And right now, during a pandemic that is an upper respiratory, I thought that would be a super valuable medicine. So you can make a tea out of it, or you could do a syrup. You know, to me, I prefer to sort of dry stuff and save it, put it to the side for tea, because that lasts longer. You know, you make a syrup out of it. You still dry the leaves, but then you make the syrup, and that only lasts so many months. And that's if you keep it in perfect cool and dry conditions, dark, and in a good bottle. Anyway, so let's talk about how, you know, a tea is very obvious. You take the leaves, you dry them, you throw them in a cup with hot water. You can do it in a tea ball or strainer or something if you want, or not. It doesn't matter. I'm not sure I've ever actually had colt's foot tea. I guess I've had it mixed with other things, like mullein is also a good cough medication. And it's fine. It's so good that you don't even have to add like honey. It's sweet and yummy and fine. And so the reason I started getting into herbs at all and started learning about these specific herbs, colt's foot and mullein, is that my son, when he was little, was given too much cold medicine by another relative, who was not smart enough to realize that two different medications, for example, say you have Dimetapp and Robitussin, I don't know, that's just, I'm making that up. Even though they are different medications, they have the same active ingredients, which in this case was, I think, pseudoephedrine or something. So my son was technically OD'd. But, you know, we talked to poison control and his doctor and whatever, and we just had to, you know, sort of wait it out, get it out of his system. I think I gave him water. I don't remember. But ever since, he had a intolerance to commercial cold medications. And let me tell you, as a parent, there is nothing worse than watching your child be sick, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. There were different cold medications that he could still take, but they weren't as effective. And so somehow, you know, herbalism is a very, very, very big thing in Vermont. Very popular. A lot of people, almost, I would say almost every household, somebody practices herbalism. And why not? You know, it's a very green state. These plants are everywhere for free, you know, in your yard or when you go for a hike or whatever. So I started learning about it a little bit. We happen to be blessed to have a very well-known and famous herbalist locally. Her name is Rosemary Gladstar. She actually lives very close to me, and it's always been my dream to have the time and money to take her class. I've never had the perfect combination of time and money. But anyway, so I started buying her books, and I started taking some little like day-long classes locally. You know, once in a while, like my library would have some, or somebody I would know would be like, hey, you know, there's such and such a class happening, you know, at such and such barn or whatever, do you want to come? And I would. And those were invaluable to me, but I also did a lot of self-teaching because I didn't have the time and money to sort of do it in a class type setting. And so I probably have a dozen books on different herbalism, everything from really, really, really old books, they're reprints, but you know, stuff from 300 years ago all the way up to modern times, and stuff with scientific studies and backings, to stuff that's just old, you know, folklore type stuff. And the thing is, as time went on, I learned very quickly that this shit works. It really works. And so there are plants out there that can be antibiotics, and plants that can be antivirals and antibacterial and antifungal and, you know, cough suppressants and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and some plants you drink as a tea, and some you make a poultice, and some you can even smoke. For example, when I quit smoking over a year ago, I smoked some mullein and I think lavender and some CBD. because my lungs were in very bad shape. And so those were healing to my lungs and calming to my system as I was quitting. And so, and I didn't do it for long, maybe a month or so, just to get through that hump of, stressing out and get over the habit of, the hand-to-mouth thing was smoking. Anyway, so the first things are going to be coming up here in northern central Vermont, and I expect that to be Coltsfoot. And so my hope is that over the next year I will be taking you not along in the car, but in the woods, and we're gonna go look up some herbs and maybe do some recipes, how to make syrups and how to make teas and etc., and how you can heal yourself and your family. So part 2 of all that, I am a former nurse, but I also believe in a lot of alternative types of medicine, like Reiki. I'm a Reiki master, and herbalism and shamanism, etc. So part 2 is that in this day and age, a lot of our medications are failing or expected to fail, and by that I mean antibiotics mostly. And so right now, I just told you I'm on Cipro for my infection in both my toes. I've been on it since Saturday. Yesterday was Tuesday night, so I've taken 2 a day since Sunday. I took 2 a day. I took 1 Saturday. That should be well established in my system and kicking out any infection. And I had so much disgusting infection last night that it's like, is this shit even working? And of course I know there's the whole thing where you have to have the right antibiotic for the right infection, and they certainly didn't culture the infection and see exactly what it was and make sure that we matched it up antibiotic wise. But Cipro is sort of broad spectrum, I think, and it should cover most infections, and it's just not doing anything. Plus I'm putting triple antibiotic cream on it, or ointment, and so that to me is a little terrifying. But I could almost guarantee if I found, gosh, now I'm thinking about it, if I sliced a piece of garlic and put it on my toes, taped it on tonight, I could almost guarantee the infection would be gone by tomorrow. They've even tested garlic, just garlic, plain old garlic, against like, what do you call it, smallpox in a petri dish. And that's why I said I studied the science of this stuff too, not just the, folklore. And it did better than many modern medicines, or any modern medicine. So, like antivirals, whatever. I mean, we're still in antiviral world, we're still in its infancy as far as the study. And this pandemic should have showed us that, we're scrambling to figure something out. Is it remdesivir? Is it this? Is it that? Is it a vaccine, to combat COVID? And the thing is mutating and spreading faster than our science can figure it out. We're just in the early infancy stages of antiviral land, I'm a child of the 70s, 80s, and remember the AIDS epidemic, and that it was just, you just died of it. Yes, they've made huge leaps and bounds since then, but viruses are stubborn, nasty little critters, and weird things. And even with bacteria, as I was saying, antibiotics are now failing because they've been misused and overused, etc. But even antibiotics, I think about the fact, like, my grandmother was born in 1927, and I think that penicillin sort of came out, I'm trying to remember, it was the year before or the year after, something like that, right around when she was born. And I just think about things like, what would have killed her or my uncle or aunts or whatever, all born around that time. had they not had antibiotics. But now we may be heading back into that type of, time where there's just not as effective antibiotics, or there's these antibiotic resistant bacterias. I remember my daughter getting an antibiotic resistant throat infection many years ago, and she almost died. It was terrifying. I flew her going over 100 miles an hour up to Burlington to the hospital as her tonsils were swelling and cutting off her air. Why did I go to Burlington? Because I'd already been either that day or the day before to the other hospital near us, and and they allowed her to get to that point. So flew her up to Burlington. They whipped her into a room, threw her in a dental chair of all things, because that was the easiest way to work on her. No medication or anything, because obviously not getting air is more critical than anything. And they freaking sliced open her tonsil with a scalpel and drained the infection. It was the most horrible thing I've ever seen. One of the most horrible. She was shaking and traumatized after. But that was an antibiotic resistant infection. And I remember that same year, several other people I knew got the same type infection, throat infection. Another friend of mine got it and ended up in the hospital, and then ended up from the hospital getting MRSA on her skin. And so anyway, so it's really important, I think, in this day and age for us to know alternatives, for us to go back to plant medicine and earth medicine, and believe that the earth gives us what we need. I very much believe that we are provided what we need, but we need to have the knowledge. And once again, the knowledge, nobody can take that knowledge from you, right? So, if you have an infection, a slice of garlic on it, if you have a cut or whatever, do a yarrow or plantain poultice, like just very simple things that you can go out in any yard in America, I think, and find a piece of flat leaf plantain, or Canada, and put it in a little bowl with some hot water and wrap it in a piece of cotton, a t-shirt cut up, or cheesecloth or whatever, and put that on your little cut or bug bite or whatever, and boom, you have medicine. It's medicine. It's real medicine. And other countries have studied these. One of my most treasured book is, I think it's called the Green Pharmacy, or the Green Herbal Pharmacy. And the guy who wrote this is a doctor, or has his doctorate, right? And he pulled together all these studies from other countries, like, let's say Germany, where they actually didn't say, oh, poo-poo, plantain, that's, a crazy old wives' tale. And they actually studied the plant. They broke down the compounds and the chemicals and found that these things do work. They do, shit. Sorry. Didn't mean to swear, but somebody came flying off the exit. As if they were going to just jump in my lane. And so now I'm trying to get around them. And then I had somebody in the left lane just riding my tail, which is illegal. The left lane is supposed to be for passing, but people drive like jerks. I gotta say, like, one thing I won't miss with the new job is I no longer have to do highway driving. And the highway is nice because it's always the best maintained road out there, and it's obviously fast and whatever, but people don't know how to drive in Vermont. And that's like a huge pet peeve of mine, almost daily. Sorry, I really needed some coffee. So yeah, you'll hear my rants at some point. I was pretty annoyed last night. Combination of seeing all the garbage on the side of the road, on the highway, like, ew. And, like, how gross must you be to throw your garbage out onto the road, number one. And number two, and it's disrespectful. And I know a lot of it is a lot of tourists. too, because I've seen, oh, that was what upset me yesterday, was that a couple, what we call in Vermont out-of-staters, or flatlanders, you know, flying by me at like 90 on the highway, and then people wonder why, like, you know, we get upset. Well, you know, you're driving dangerously and aggressively, and we don't do that here. At least nobody I know does it. So anyway, back to the plant medicine. So, you know, it's yeah, it's, and so then there's ways to do it, and I strongly recommend that you try to find like a local foraging group on Facebook or something that you can join, and A, you can learn about the different plants and blah blah blah, but B, you can you know, you learn sort of the rules of the road, such as you only harvest a certain percentage of what's there, etc. So I've never done mushrooms. I've always been pretty afraid because, you know, mushrooms are a whole different ball of wax, and you can misidentify one and die. But I do want to do some, I would love to find some like morels at some point. Boy, that would be just amazing. But for me, when I forage, it's always, I'm looking for medicine. And I know little secret spots. I know where I can pick wintergreen. Oh, there's like a dead bird on the side of the road. I can't stand, that's another thing I don't like about the highway, especially in the spring. There's so many dead animals. So that looked like a dead crow or something. But up ahead, I know I'm about to see a dead coyote. It's been there a couple days. I've even seen a huge dead bear here on the road. You know, just please be careful when you're driving in the spring. The animals are for sure all Twitter baited, which, they're, you know, that's not really true. They're not really like breeding and whatever. That actually happens in the fall, but for most of them, but they are like, you know, they're waking up, they're active, they're, you know, maybe moving around a lot more, and maybe even a little sort of not totally, well, maybe a little groggy or whatever, but just please be careful. Just watch for them, because not only can you kill them, whatever, but you can really kill or damage yourself or your vehicle or whatever. So anyway, yeah, I forget what I was saying. That was sort of the last part of plant medicine. So really powerful stuff. I feel for our future, it's really important to know. I love that sort of when I started getting into it, I knew of very few people that were into plant medicine, and over the years, I mean, just more and more and more. And I don't know if that's like sort of like you know, your vibe attracts your tribe kind of thing, and I was vibing that and like attracting people who are into it, or like I'll never forget, like one time I went to a herbalism class at our library, and there's my Aunt Gail, and I'm like, hey, and she's like, hey, and I'm like, you, and she's like, you, and here we both were like sort of into herbalism, and neither one of us knew it about the other. Really funny. And that was like a multi-part class, if I remember, 3 or 4 classes. So that was great. But yeah, so people are learning, and people are waking up, and we need to remember these things. And you know, I believe in Western medicine. Obviously, I was a nurse. Obviously, I currently work for a health center. But I also believe it has limitations, and that there is some truth and reality to the ancient medicines, whether it be acupuncture, herbalism, Reiki, whatever. And medicine, modern medicine, Western medicine is beginning to believe all of that too. They're beginning to do Reiki in hospitals and etc. So and understand that diet and nutrition are important, and those kinds of things. So it's really, really, really important. It's a really good way to live, and over over time, we're going to talk about all this kind of stuff. You know, does cinnamon help diabetes, and does, you know, whatever help, whatever. And what ways to take these things, and how to prepare them, and how to store them, and etc. So yeah, so that's going to be my upcoming focus. With some other stuff in between. Still going to be working on rehabilitating my RV. Now that it's spring, I can do a lot of the outside stuff that in Vermont you couldn't do for a long time, including, I really hope to sort of paint it. I don't know if I'll get to, but I'm really hoping to sort of paint at least part of it. So yeah, so stay tuned, and all that's coming up. All right, take care, stay woke, folks. Bye.